For my MyMaps project, I decided to create a map documenting my Washington, D.C. trip, which I had taken back in October of 2019 with my mom and with some friends from our church. The first day, technically, even though it says Cracker Barrel, our first day was actually us flying from California all the way to Richmond, Virginia. And when we got into Richmond, Virginia, it was about 1 p.m. And so we decided to have lunch at a local Chick-fil-A. And then we went straight to our hotel where we rested. And then we went to the Cracker Barrel down the street from our hotel. And that was a really great first meal. Everyone really enjoyed it. So that was like technically our first day. And then our second day there, we first went to the Yorktown Battlefield, and this is a memorial column with a Liberty statue commemorating a 1781 battle and peace treaties. There's a picture here. This was a really beautiful monument and overlooked a lake, which was very beautiful. And a great reminder of the freedom that we have here in America. And then here are authentic cannons, actually that the British used, I believe. And here's a fun fact. The cannons that the British used were actually much smaller than the cannons that were used by the Americans and the French. And yes, I was listening to a lot of Hamilton during this trip, and although Hamilton does not include everything in the Broadway musical, there's a certain line in one of the songs where Alexander Hamilton says, "Let's steal their cannons," referring to the British. And actually, I'm not quite sure if that's quite accurate, because the British cannons were honestly not very powerful, and they were a lot smaller, so they were of really no use to the Americans or the French. So after that, we went to Colonial Williamsburg, and this building right here is actually where our capital used to be prior to being now Washington, D.C. So this was our original first capital here. Very small. This is some of the buildings here. There's a lot of reenactments from the 1700s that goes on here. And it was just really nice to walk the grounds and kind of see they lived back in the 1700s. After that, we went to our Springfield hotel. On the way there, it was actually quite a trip because we were actually down here. We were actually down here originally, and then we had to travel all the way up here to Springfield. And so around here, we actually had some dinner, and then we continued our trip to Springfield, and we stayed a couple nights actually out there. So on day 3, we went to the George Washington Manor on Mount Vernon, and that was beautiful to walk the grounds of. This is his house where he lived with his wife and children. When we went, they were actually making some renovations, so it didn't look as nice as it is right here. But it was really beautiful to see. This is what it looked like when we went. They were doing a lot of renovations. This is where they cooked meals at. But yeah, I really enjoyed it there. They were barely starting to invent ice cream at this time, and the very popular favorite of George Washington was the sardine flavored ice cream, and that does not sound very appetizing, but it was very popular while he was living on Mount Vernon. So yes, and then after we spent most of the day there, and then we took a night tour in Washington, D.C. itself. So we got to see the Abraham Lincoln Monument, the Thomas Jefferson Monument, amongst many other areas in this park area. We saw the Washington Monument right here, passed by some of the Smithsonian's. It was really nice to see the World War II Memorial. That was really beautiful. We saw the Lincoln Memorial, as I said earlier. But that was really fun. It was a night tour, so it was very quick and very fast-paced, but it was nice to see everything during the nighttime. And then during our free day, we did see all of this during the day. And then after that, we went back to our hotel. On day 4, we actually split up groups. We had a very large group with us, so half of us went to the Library of Congress and the other half went to the Capitol. So first my group that I was part of, we went to the Library of Congress first, and on the outside of there's like a building within a building. So on the first outer building, it's like a museum, and you see a lot of beautiful paintings, the architecture. We got to learn a lot of history about the architecture. And then some people went to have lunch at 12, and then me and a few of my friends, we actually went more deep inside the Library of Congress and were actually able to get some library cards, and we actually got to go within the library. We could not take any pictures. This is actually a picture that's taken on the outside of the building, like that first inner building. But honestly, when you're really in there, it's very breathtaking. And it's really exciting to be in there and just get to see firsthand what some of the people that live within the Capitol get to actually do within this library. After that, we went into the Capitol, and typically they do a normal tour of the Capitol. However, we were actually able to get a more personal tour, as someone we know from our church actually knew someone who was a security guard for the Capitol for many, many years, and so we actually got a closer look inside the Capitol, which was very special. And it's honestly a very beautiful building. And then after that, we actually did a cruise dinner along a river, and actually it was right here in this river area, and we kind of passed by Maryland a bit, and then came back to the Capitol, and then we went back to our hotel. On day 5, we went to the Ford Theater. This is where President Lincoln was shot. Here is a picture of the theater. It's very small, and actually they did not have these chairs here. It used to be just wooden chairs, very small wooden chairs that they would set in the theater. And this was the very luxurious box office up here where President Lincoln was shot. And then after he was shot, he was actually taken to the Peterson House, which is right across the street, as you can see from the Ford's Theater. And this was just a neighbor that said, "Hey, come in here." And they brought President Lincoln in there, and this is the building where he actually died. And then after that, we took a trip to the Arlington National Cemetery, and this is a military cemetery. All of our military are buried here. And this was just a great way for me to just continue to appreciate what our military does for us. I'm very thankful for what they do for us, and how they fight for our freedom every single day. But this was very an emotional trip, but it was just very beautiful and just a very nice way to also meet veterans there as well, and talk to them and hear their stories. So this was a very humbling experience for me. And then don't remember what we did for dinner out there, but eventually we went back to our hotel. And then on day 6, we went to the Museum of the Bible. I have actually been to Israel 2 years prior to this, and I got to see many of the Dead Sea Scrolls and see a lot of real artifacts. But the Museum of the Bible was definitely a different experience. There's a lot of interactive rooms where they kind of mimicked certain areas of Israel. They had like 4 levels within this building. It was very large. You probably honestly needed like 2 days to travel and look at everything and take everything in. But we were there for about half the day, and it was really nice to just, see more of what they have uncovered here. And then after that, we took a very long walk to the Holocaust Memorial Museum. Again, I have been to Israel, so I've actually been to the Holocaust Museum in Israel as well. So with this building, I didn't see anything that was new. But again, it's very humbling to see what the Jews had to suffer through during the Holocaust. Now, during this time, I was starting to get very sick and very ill, so I actually did not travel more within the Holocaust Museum, but my mom did, and she came back bawling her eyes out, which is honestly what happened to me when I was in Israel. So as you can see, here is where we started at the Museum of the Bible, and we walked all the way down 4th Street, went down Independence Avenue, and then turned right here into the Holocaust Museum. So that was actually a very long walk because we actually had an appointment for both this museum and the Holocaust Museum, so we were on a time crunch, so we were practically jogging all of this area. But I was getting sick, so I wasn't able to really appreciate the Holocaust Museum the way I would have liked to. And then after that, we actually had dropped off some of our members of this trip because they were actually going to a Dodger game. I was supposed to go, but again, I was sick, so I didn't really get to do that. And there was more to our trip. Our 7th day there was our free day, so my mom and I, we did go into one of the Smithsonian museums. We went into the Air and Space Museum, and then we also went into one of the art galleries there. I believe we went into this one here, this National Gallery of Art, for the American and European art. And then we actually had lunch in this National Gallery of Art sculpture garden, and that was really nice to see the sculptures there. And then we actually made our way to Gettysburg after that, which was a very long trip, and it was also raining, so that made it a lot longer. But the last days there, I was not able to visit any of the other places because I was stuck in a hotel. I was not feeling good. We think I just had a very severe cold, but I wasn't able to enjoy the last few days of the trip. But this concludes my presentation, and as you can see, we traveled a lot. We actually went to Baltimore. We went to the airport in Baltimore, and we made our trip back home to California. But this was ultimately a very fun trip, and I would love to do it again, hopefully in the future when things go back to normal. Thank you for watching my presentation.